And I want you to think about this. I want you to think, as a student, what was your best ever learning experience? We get asked that, sometimes. I don't know if you ever get asked, as a student, what was your best ever assessment experience? I want you to turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, and very quickly, in 1 minute, how's that? Very quickly, in 1 minute, say to each other, what was your best ever learning or what was your best ever assessment experience? If I can have your attention back now, please, this is my challenge. Hello. Well, there is something for you to talk about in the break, I think. So, sounds like a lot of great learning and assessment happened in your lives. All of our institutions have a diverse student body, regardless of the extent of that diversity. We have diverse students. And we know, because of the outcomes from our students, that outcomes are not equitable for all. There are some student groups that have lower outcomes than other student groups. So, how do we meet the diverse needs of our students in a system that is designed for the average student? I want to frame that through an artificial intelligence lens. And you see here, I've also got the word for. Artificial intelligence for learning and assessment. Not to support, but for learning and assessment. From my perspective, there is a huge possible future that's fantastic. And it was actually Professor Mark Brown who said to me 2 years ago, the toothpaste is out of the tube. These are all the things. My husband said to me last night, it's almost all out of the tube. There's still some squeezing that we can do. On the flip side, we have the perils. Now you see I have a little elephant up here? That's the elephant in the room. I don't know about you, but the conversation that most people want to have with me is about artificial intelligence for cheating. I'm so bored by that conversation. Part of that conversation. Students have been cheating since the beginning of time. They will always continue to cheat, and we have to remember that the majority of our students who come to us want to learn. Right? So that's why it's important that we have artificial intelligence for learning and for assessment. But we have to be mindful of the bias in the training data. We know about that. We probably all work very hard to decolonize our curriculum or think about the diversity of our curriculum. So we need to be mindful of training materials. We know about the digital divide. I'm at the Open University. We have 160,000 students a year. We assume that all of them have a digital device. And that's not necessarily the case. We do have students without digital devices. We have to think about that. We don't know what happens between the prompt and the output. That lack of transparency is a peril. We know that there are different contexts that each of our students will find themselves in. We talk about the lived experience. I talk about the living experience, because our students are living it right now. What is their diverse living experience? And what is AI doing or not doing for that diverse learning experience? And then again at the end there, that accessibility gaps. Accessibility to learning, accessibility to assessment, so not all students can learn and be assessed, assessment for learning in the same way to be successful. So, for me, one of the ways we can mitigate against these challenges, we hear about the human in the loop, and we're hearing more recently about the educator in the loop. It's not a two-stage Venn diagram of the educator and artificial intelligence. We also need to take what we know and have researched around inclusive learning and teaching. What makes it best for our students so the majority, if not all of our students, can achieve to the best of their potential? That's that inclusive learning and teaching. We have to think about these three things together. And more recently, in talking to our students, I've decided that we need to have the student in the loop. So it's not good enough just to think about the human, but who is that human in the loop? So having that student in the loop, and the student as a co-creator of their own education. And I saw a headline recently, and there's a link in the reference page. There's a link in the references there that says, students are recreating your curriculum with AI right now. Right, so all of those months and years, in some cases, of painstaking curriculum development is being recreated very quickly with an AI tool. So we have to think about that. We have to put students into that big until I heard about the university in Turkey, Open University, had 1 million students. Right? So they made like 160,000 feel very small all of a sudden. So how do we take this idea that we have to personalize their education, that each student needs to be a co-creator in their own education, and do it at scale? You see here, there's a child with some bricks. I can't call them by their real name, I don't think. But we have these bricks that this child is playing with. Finite number of bricks, almost infinite number of possibilities. Ford vans, the components that they have mean that each driver, there's over 2 million possibilities for Ford vans. So how do we take that education and say we have a finite number of things that we can make this very large number of personal learning experiences? And I recently learned, I didn't know this, the airplane's the same. All of these different components means that there are so many different millions of types of airplanes. No idea. So, we have to start with this question of what is personalization. It's a fancy term, we hear it all the time, and it's going to solve all of our educational problems in the future. Right, we can go home now. These are all of the different things that we've heard about personalization. You will recognize a lot of these. Just a reminder that some of these ideas around personalization do not have an AI-enabled component. So I want us to think about when we personalize, when should we build an artificial intelligence and when should we not build an artificial intelligence? Don't try and solve a problem that doesn't exist with a technology that might not be right to solve it. So in thinking about that personalization for our students, really think about what is the problem you're trying to solve and what is the best way to solve it. And I want to give you this question to think about over the next couple of days as you listen to everybody talking. How can we help every student feel that the course that they are on was personally made for them? Because that's personalization. It doesn't mean that we have to personalize everything for students. They need to feel that it's personalized for them. So there are some ways in which we can do that. So for example, I've got 8 points here that I'll talk through. Co-designing. Now, people think about different things and say, oh, we co-design with our students. We asked them at the very end of the stage to be critical readers and what they thought. And then we didn't listen to what they said, and we didn't change our curriculum at all. That is not co-design with students, right? But I hear about that kind of thing. So we need to make sure that we're co-designing with students, we're co-designing with staff, and most importantly, that group that is designing the curriculum or designing the assessment, I think in many ways even more important, the assessment, is representative of the student body. I love purple, I think you can probably tell that. Yeah. I wouldn't sit in a room with everybody who loved purple and create a curriculum and believe that it was right for everyone. We need to make sure that whoever is creating that curriculum, that is a diverse group of people as well. You will probably have at your own institution some inclusive curriculum principles. Don't forget about those. Keep bringing those back in and thinking about, okay, how can we be more inclusive? Design for flexibility and choice is an interesting one because ultimately, wouldn't it be fantastic if students could learn in the way they wanted to, take an assessment that's best suited their style, and then they could take it when they wanted to. And that utopia is not realistic at the moment for many reasons. And also, just because a student might like to do a PowerPoint presentation instead of write an assignment doesn't mean that they should do every single assessment in a PowerPoint presentation. So we have to think about the skills and the way that people need to assess. But we have to think completely differently about assessment and what it means. And I really want to focus back on that assessment for learning. But putting choice in, research shows that if you have choice in assessment, students will do better. And with AI, I think there's a lot we can do around that flexibility and choice for learning and assessment. Of course, artificial intelligence is only a tool. So I just need to make sure I've got my notes so I haven't forgotten anything. So artificial intelligence, of course, is a tool. So we need to keep that in mind and use it as a tool. And it should augment the learning, not substitute for the learning. And also, I think on this last one here, leverage artificial intelligence thoughtfully and ethically. Could your students do their job without AI? So yes, great what they can do with the job with AI, and they have those AI skills, but could they do it without? And that I know is the type of person I would want to employ, someone who could work both with and without. So the fifth one here is about assessment reflective of real world skills. Those skills are changing. We heard in our previous 2 talks what those skills are looking like. We heard about how few people have the skills that they need for that future world. We need to design assessment so that those students can learn and then use those skills in the real world. We heard in the last couple of presentations around staff not having the skills that they need. This is not just digital skills. This is also about skills around inclusive pedagogy. How can we expect our staff to design inclusive, accessible for all curriculum if they don't have skills in inclusive pedagogy and universal design for learning? And universal design for learning is great. If you haven't looked at it, please do. It's different to differentiation, where we think about each student individually or how we might differentiate for groups within our group. This is about the representation. It's about engagement in learning. And it's about learning that works for all. So have a look if you haven't already. And I know there's some UDL experts in this room. Don't just use your data to identify that you've got problems with your equitable or inequitable outcomes. Don't use it just for efficiency. Also use it to understand what your inequitable outcomes are so that you can address those as well. And then finally, I think a challenge for all of us, as we've been speaking so much about inclusion principles, let's start thinking about belonging principles. And I think if we have people and students who feel they belong, if we design assessment that they want to do, then we don't ever have to discuss AI teaching. Ultimately, if we can increase the control that students have over their learning experience, they will learn more and they will learn better. And actually, we will feel more fulfilled as educators ourselves. So, coming back to these questions here, I want to ask for a show of hands. The first question, what was your best ever learning experience? For how many people did that center around a charismatic character? For example, think about Dead Poets Society and Robin Williams' Net. How many had it around a teacher or a scholar? That's so surprising to me, because normally people go straight to, it was this brilliant teacher, and this brilliant teacher did X. And this audience right now, unless you didn't raise your hand, unless you didn't actually share, I'm stunned, because normally the response is, yes, it was about someone who was really great. That's the human in the loop. Professor Mychelle says, teaching is a caring profession. We will always have teachers who are carers. We have to keep the human in the loop because of that caring. How many of you struggled to come up with your best ever assessment experience? So about 50% of you in there. I think this is where AI can really help us. AI for learning, AI for assessment, I think that's where we can have a bigger benefit. So, as you go through the next couple of days, I've got an action for you to think about what changes or change that you are going to make at your institution to harness artificial intelligence for equitable and inclusive personalization. And also to think about when AI isn't the solution, but there's actually something that we could do better for inclusive and equitable personalization. I'm going to end with a quote. We have, I spoke to about more than 500 students at the university around the future of AI and the future personalization. And this is a quote from a student. I'm imagining that at the end of a week's study, I might engage with an AI entity, either online or in virtual reality. This entity will ask me about how I feel the week has been. I thought that's interesting that the student brought that in. What key points I have discovered, and then show me something to describe with reference to that week's learning, and maybe bring in some other module concepts too. I would then receive some feedback which would guide me to review some things or not to forget others. This would be a soft assessment that would inform directed learning and revision. So that's a student who off her own back came up with us. And I just want to leave that with you and say thank you very much. Thank you. No, please. Sorry, there's one more thing that someone pointed out to me, and I think this is sorry. No. I know I meant it. Is AI actively listens, and how often in life do you have that opportunity where someone actually listens to every single word that you're saying? Right? So I think about that too.